who's okay. 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 Welcome to Chicago IANDS. A crazy Saturday. We've been having technical problems here. And David Young, who is our guest speaker, is listed as Jeffa. So uh, just know that where you see Jeffa, that's David Young, and he's our guest speaker. And he was going to play his flute for the meditation, but we can't get it to work. So I'm going to do our usual meditation. So if you are uh, have things on your lap or something that's distracting you, put it aside and get yourself in a comfortable position and allow yourself to start relaxing and gradually let your eyes gently close and let yourself go where you go when you go. Welcome back. Ah, goodness, what a day. Couple of brief announcements. One next month, our speaker will be Scott Robinson, who wrote a wonderful book called There Are No Lines in Heaven. I have his book here. I don't know if you can see it. Uh, he received a prayer. It said, "There are no lines in heaven when you reach the pearly gates. No Christians in the center, Jews to the left, and Muslims to the right, as you are all children of God." He had two near-death experiences. One of them, he awoke in the morgue after he was declared dead. It's quite an intense and wonderful story. He's dedicated his life to learning all kinds of healing modalities, and he teaches these to people. It has an extensive list of things that he can help people with. So please join us next month and learn about Scott. So thank you all. Sorry we're a couple of minutes late. We had technical problems, but we are up and at them now. We had problems getting things connected so that David could play his flute. But he's got other good things. He's got lots of good things to share. He's one of the most resourceful people I know. So I'm going to turn it over to David and let him tell you all about what he's been up to.
Well,
David?
It's nice to be back with the Chicago IANDS group. I really had great times when I did my performances at that theater in Chicago. And
Hospital.
oh, so what's been happening with me is when I was doing my meditation events between 2014 and 2020, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and Mother Mary appeared to 1,500 people at my events over that time period, and it was 400 events in a row. And one of the interesting things that happened or didn't happen is what they did not talk about, because not one of those 1,500 people were told one word from the Bible, not one person. And all the people who came to my events, some of them had healings or reconnected with their loved ones, but half of the people in my audience that came to my 500 events that I did before COVID, half the people in the audience were professional channelers. So just imagine I'm playing my flutes, I'm getting everybody in a meditative state, and I played the flutes for about a half hour like I did at your workshop when I was there. And after that meditation was over, half of the room was filled with psychics that got messages from one of the ascended masters or one of the goddesses or archangels. And a great deal of them were having experiences with Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and Mother Mary. And they were told parts of their story that became part of my book that's called, it's called The True Story of Jesus and His Wife, Mary Magdalene. This kind of adding a little comedy into our show here. Well, at least it's getting me to crack a smile here. So, and these experiences that people had, I put them all together in my book, and it's it tells a very different story than the story that we were told in the Bible. And I made a video documentary, like a presentation that we have that we're going to be showing here during this presentation. And I'm going to give you a little intro to what was going on, and then we will play the video. It's a 25-minute video of me explaining the diagram of their family tree. And when I say their, I mean Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and Mother Mary's family tree, because Jesus's family and Mary Magdalene's family were very, very connected and interconnected. And that's what you're going to see in the video. I draw the diagram of the family tree on a big screen. So this way you could see how they were related, because they were first cousins, and that's the beginning of it, and how they were related to Joseph of Arimathea. And after 6 hours on that terrible day 2,000 years ago, Jesus was put into the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. But they've taken out the relationship of Joseph of Arimathea and Jesus. And the last person seen at that tomb is Mary Magdalene. And they've taken out Mary Magdalene's relationship with Jesus, as well as her relationship with Joseph of Arimathea. So when you see this in the family tree that I'm going to draw a diagram of, it shows a whole other side of the story of why they made the story into a mystery, because the story was not a mystery completely. And so why don't we go right into that video, and then after the video is over, you guys can ask me questions and we can take it from there. Are you guys seeing the video?
No.
Vicky's working on it? Okay.
Bear with me a second, please.
Okay. Well, if you want, I could do a little tap dance while you're getting it.
Yeah. Oh, come on, I can't get this off my screen. I get out, I apologize. There we go. This is up. I apologize, I had this all set up. I can't get out.
Well, I think in the movie business, this is called suspense.
Yes, I think you're right. I apologize. Here we go.
That's a good sign.
No, it's not. Oh my goodness. I apologize. I can't, this here, there we go. Now we can go in.
Okay, that's a very good sign.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have your music on, the audio on for the video? Because we should be hearing something. Yeah, I'm not hearing any music. Okay,
Can you hear?
I don't hear anything.
It's all on.
Do you hear me talking in the video?
I do. I do. Anyone else can?
No.
We
No?
don't hear him, no.
Okay, so let's fix that and then we'll go back to the beginning of the video.
Okay, hang on a second. I'll see if I can.
It's probably your Zoom settings.
Yeah,
I
that
know,
was
I'm just,
the original sound thing.
can you hear it now?
Nope.
Oh my goodness. Does anyone have any suggestions for me, please? What settings to put in here?
It's just if you're playing something from your laptop, you're supposed to have original sound set. That's all I know. I don't know where you even find it.
Okay, then that means you guys are gonna get the real thing and I'm gonna do it.
You go into your setting or your video audio and
It is.
select.
That's where I'm at now, and I have original sound for musicians hit. See right here? Can you see this?
No, we're just seeing his screen. His movie.
I got a whiteboard and I'm gonna just
Okay.
do this over here, so this way you guys can see it, because
Try clicking
Okay.
on audio in the lower left corner. There's a drop down. It says audio and then video.
No.
Click
No,
on the audio.
oh, I'm gonna have to take off that
Yeah.
that background.
I'll do it in a minute, David, but I think that's where we were before, and none of that was working, so.
Yeah.
But I will get back on to stop sharing, and now it should be up to you, David.
Okay, so
Here.
I'm gonna turn off blur the background, so this way you can see this. Okay, yeah, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
yes,
Let me hear you say yeah.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
All right. So if you saw a movie and you only saw the last 5 minutes of a movie, this is making me smile a little bit because it's, this whole ramp up and the suspense. I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as I have. So if you saw only the last 5 minutes of a movie, oh, wait a minute, I got an idea. I can actually have background music with this.
We can't hear the background music.
Okay, well, then here we go. So if you only saw the last 5 minutes of a movie, you'd have no idea how the different characters were related or connected because that all happens in the beginning of the movie. Okay, so what is left in the Bible after they rewrote the Bible in 381, you see, they rewrote the Bible in 381 because people were having all these questions that didn't make sense. Like, how could Jesus be the only son of God if he has brothers and sisters? Like, how does that work into the whole situation? Okay. And one of the things, so in 381, at the Council of Nicaea, that's in Turkey. I'm going to try to get this thing all on the screen here. At the Council of Nicaea under Emperor Constantine, they took out a whole bunch of stuff from the Bible that was confusing people. And one of the other reasons why they created the missing years of Jesus's life is because before they took out all these years of his life between the time he was 12 to when he was 30, the early Christian boys were all having bar mitzvahs because his bar mitzvah was in the Bible before they rewrote it. And so when you're 12 years old, I grew up Jewish. When you're 12 years old, you start studying for your bar mitzvah. And then your bar mitzvah is at 13. So what they did is they just said the missing years are the missing years. So this way it starts at when he's 12. So this way his bar mitzvah was taken out of the Bible. Okay. And one of the things that they added to the Bible was this, was something that was in the 5 other religions that were very popular in the Middle East at the time. One of those religions was about Isis's son Horus. And Horus was born supposedly of a virgin birth. He had 12 disciples. He died supposedly of a crucifixion. And his birthday was December 25th. And that was a holiday that was celebrated in the Middle East for 1,000 years before Jesus was ever born. That was a holiday. And so what they did is they simply made a mass for Christ that we know now as Christmas. And that's where Christmas came from. So on the last day of Jesus's life in the Bible, this is going to be fun to get this thing all lined up here. Okay. So if you guys at home in TV land, if you guys have a piece of paper, you want to grab a blank piece of paper because I'm going to show you how to create the diagram of their family tree. Okay, so grab a blank piece of paper. Oh, wow. I can rest this on my shoulder like this. Man, this should be part of my act. Okay. Okay. Oh, man. Everybody ready?
Yep.
Okay, so in the bottom right-hand corner of your page, I want you to make 3 crosses. And you can, okay? Oh, wait a minute. Can you see that or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can? All right, I'll make it a little bit darker.
It's not, looks like your ink pen is beginning to fail.
Well, wouldn't that be perfect, right?
Right.
Okay.
I think
We're gonna
if you tilt the whiteboard down a little bit from the top, there
Like
you
that?
go. Now, yeah, now if the light doesn't hit, we can see it better.
Okay. So on that terrible day 2,000 years ago,
You're done?
there were 3 men that were tortured, but only one of these men was taken down from the cross after 6 hours. So you're going to write 6 hours above those 3 crosses. And you're going to put Yeshua's name to the left of the crosses. See that? And then you're going to make a straight line that goes up about halfway up the page. And above 6 hours, leaving some space above it, you're going to write the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. The tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. You got that? And under the tomb of the Joseph of Arimathea, you're going to write the words wealthy merchant, because Joseph of Arimathea is the wealthy merchant in the Bible. But they've taken out Joseph of Arimathea's relationship with Yeshua or Jesus. So we have no idea why is he put into that tomb, but the other two guys are not put into the tomb. So now go in the middle of the page across from Joseph of Arimathea, in the middle of the page, and down a couple of inches, and then you're going to write the name Mary Magdalene. Because Mary Magdalene is the last person seen at the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, but they've conveniently taken out Mary Magdalene's relationship with Joseph of Arimathea and her relationship with Yeshua. So we have no idea why are these three people even in this scene. So now I'm going to fill in the blanks. On the left side of your page, I want you to write Mother Mary. And above Mary Magdalene, in between Mother Mary and Joseph of Arimathea, I want you to put the word sister. And then under the word sister, I want you to put the word wife. Because Mother Mary's sister now became the wife. Now make an arrow from wife to Joseph of Arimathea, because Mother Mary's sister became the wife of Joseph of Arimathea, the wealthy merchant. Okay. So what happens is Joseph of Arimathea and Mother Mary's sister have two children. So now draw an arrow down to Mary Magdalene, and then make another arrow and write Martha, because Mary Magdalene's older sister was Martha in the Bible. Now, under 381, I want you to make a circle and write the Sea of Galilee in the circle. And then to the bottom left of the circle, write the word Magdala, because Magdala was a town, a village that was close to the Sea of Galilee. And so Mary Magdalene was Mary from Magdala. Her sister Martha is Martha from Magdala, the same way that you know, like Jesus from Nazareth. That's where Mary Magdalene's last name came from, because she was just from the town of Magdala, which was very close to the Sea of Galilee. Okay, so Mother Mary's sister, the wife of Joseph of Arimathea, after she has her two daughters, Martha was older, and then Mary Magdalene was younger. But after she has her two daughters, she dies young. So put a line through sister wife, because she's gone from the picture now. And now make an arrow from Mary Magdalene to Mother Mary, and from Martha to Mother Mary, because Mother Mary adopts her two nieces. All of this conveniently happens during the missing years of Jesus' life. So under Mother Mary, make a little arrow and write Jesus, and then under Jesus, write James, because James is Jesus's first brother that's 3 years younger than him, and he's known as Saint James in the Bible. Above Jesus, I want you to write 12-30. Not because my birthday is January 23rd, but I want you to write 12-30 because those are the missing years of Jesus's life. Okay? Mary Magdalene and Jesus meet when he's 30, and they are together from the time he's 30 to 33 years old. Okay? From the time he's 30 to 33 years old, they have 3 children. So write 3 kids under Mary Magdalene, 1 each year. When this terrible thing happens, Joseph of Arimathea, who is Jesus's uncle in the beginning, but he's now Jesus's father-in-law because he's married to Mary Magdalene, Joseph of Arimathea's daughter. Joseph of Arimathea pays a Roman soldier to take him down from the cross after 6 hours. The reason why he was taken down from the cross after 6 hours is because it was the eve of Passover. So write the eve of Passover under 6 hours, because there was an ancient Roman law that stated a Jewish person could not be tortured over a Jewish holiday. So because of that, Jesus's father-in-law, Joseph of Arimathea, pays a Roman soldier to take him down from the cross and put him in his tomb. That's the family's tomb. Okay? And that Roman soldier lets Mary Magdalene, his wife, and his sister-in-law, Martha, who are both healers, they're both shamans. The Roman soldier lets Mary Magdalene and Martha into the tomb each day to change the bandages on his hands and on his feet and on his rib. And on the 3rd day, that Roman soldier brought a wooden cart. I'm going to show you a picture of the cart. Brought a wooden cart with ancient wheels like this. The cart is filled with hay. The Roman soldier slides the hay off to one side of the cart, takes Jesus's body out of the tomb while he's in a coma. He's not dead. He was tortured for 6 hours and he was having a near-death experience. The same way anybody who was tortured for 6 hours would have a near-death experience. He puts Jesus's body in the center of the cart, covers up his body with hay. Now his body is concealed. Mary Magdalene rides the horse, and this is how she saves his life. They make their way up to France, which takes them about 5 years to get up there, going through, you know what? If I grab my book here, I can show you the map that's in the book of their journey. Okay, can you see that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, you see the little white star in the corner here? Can you see that? That's where they started in Jerusalem. And they went all the way up through the Middle East, all the way till they ended up in France, in the south of France, in a place that's called Saint-Maximin. Once they got to Saint-Maximin, that's where the famous Cave of Mary Magdalena is. And once they got there, put a line under 3 kids, and then write the name Sarah, because their daughter Sarah was born in the cave, and Sarah eventually had 3 kids of her own. And so what they allude to in the Da Vinci Code, that Mary Magdalene somehow was pregnant with Jesus's child, this is how this all happened. Now, back when this whole thing was happening, Mary Magdalene had to make the hardest decision anybody would ever have to make. Does she let her husband die? Or does she give her 3 children over to Mother Mary so she can try to save her husband's life? And that's what she does. And from that point, Jesus and Mary Magdalene never saw their 3 kids again, and they never saw Mother Mary again. And those 3 kids grew up thinking that Mother Mary was their mom when Mother Mary was actually their grandmother. Now I'm going to tell you a story that's in the book. And the woman's name is Crystal. So, I did all these meditation events between 2014 and 2020. And one of the people who was hosting my events was a woman named Crystal in Massachusetts. And we became good friends. She was an older lady, and, there was a very nice vibe between us. And we were having lunch one day, and I asked her, how did you get involved in meditation? Because she had written 3 books and she was a really respected person in her community, in her spiritual community. And I asked her, how did you get into spirituality? And Crystal explained that she was in the corporate world for like 30 years. And when she retired from the corporate world, she got interested in meditation. And when she went to her first meditation class, there was a woman in the front who was explaining, we're going to close our eyes, we're going to take some deep breaths. We're going to allow any images to come into our inner vision and just allow it to happen, whatever you see. And so Crystal is sitting in the back of the room. She's got her eyes closed. And Jesus appears next to her left ear, and Jesus tells her, can you forgive me? And she says, forgive you for what? Why would I need to forgive you? And Jesus tells her to forgive me because we had to leave you when you were little because it wasn't safe to bring you where we were going. At that moment, Crystal is given a vision of being one of Jesus and Mary Magdalene's 3 children, and she is bawling her eyes out because now she understands why she's had this abandonment issue her entire life. And those abandonment issues actually went back in many of her lives over the last 2,000 years. So the meditation ends, and the woman who is leading the meditation points to Crystal and says, Crystal, I just want to tell you that during the meditation, I could see Jesus whispering in your left ear, but I couldn't tell what he was saying to you. She was one of their 3 children who lost their mom and dad and was brought up by Mother Mary. So right now I'm going to go back to this over here, and I'm going to erase the stuff here so I have more room. And now we're going to write the number 1279. Because in the year 1279, in the year 1279, a French nobleman was visited in a dream by Mary Magdalene. 1,300 years basically after all this stuff happens. And Mary Magdalene tells this French nobleman that her bones are buried in a box under a little church in the south of France in a little village called Saint Maximin. And I'm going to spell that for you. Saint Maximin. Saint Maximin. And this is such a powerful experience that the French nobleman takes a crew of guys down to the south of France. They find the little village of Saint Maximin, and they find the church, and they go under the church and they find a wooden box. And when they open up the box, there are human bones in the box. And there's a handwritten letter in the box that states, here lie the bones of Saint Mary Magdalene. So they built the Basilica of Saint Mary Magdalene, and they changed the name of the town in 1279 from Saint Maximin in their historical records to Saint Maximin le Saint Baume, Baume, which means the saint from the cave. So you can write the saint from the cave underneath that. And that's where the Basilica of St. Mary Magdalene stands now. The basilica was not far from the famous Cave of Mary Magdalene that many people go to as a pilgrimage in the south of France. I went there in 2017. From 2016 to 2017, my girlfriend at the time her name was Mimi, and she was from Cuba, and she really hardly spoke English, but she could channel 4-syllable words, 5-syllable words of things that she had no idea what these words even meant. And she was channeling part of this story to me. So after I guess probably about 800 people at that point had experiences with Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and Mother Mary. And Mimi would get messages from them, and these turned out to be kind of comical messages because, like, for example, Jesus told Mimi to tell me that there's big news coming out of the Vatican in Rome. And I'm thinking to myself, well, he's got to know I'm Jewish. He has to know that I've never cared about anything that came out of the Vatican in Rome. I mean, that's not in my world at all. So, like, why would he tell me that? So just imagine that he told me that the first time through Mimi on Thursday morning. And just imagine Thursday evening, I drive 2 hours away to do an event somewhere. And after the meditation is over, 3 people in the audience say, Jesus appeared to me and told me to tell you there's big news coming out of the Vatican in Rome. Now, can you imagine me hearing this stuff? And just imagine the next night is Friday night, and 2 people the next night are giving the same message from Jesus. And so this goes on for a week at my events, because I did 4 events a week from 2014 till 2020. Well, the following week, the new Pope, he was the new Pope at the time. This had to be in 2016 about. The new Pope issues a statement that pisses off everybody at the Vatican. The new Pope said there is no hell up there. The only hell there is down here on earth. Well, that goes against the Bible. Well, the Pope's supposed to know the Bible. So these were the ways, or an example of how they were giving me information that ended up being real. So what ends up happening is that Jesus tells Mimi that we're supposed to go to France. Okay, so I ask her, well, what city does he want us to go to? Because France is a pretty big place. And so she got quiet for a minute and she said, it starts with a D. I said, great. At least we got a letter. We can start with that. Can you imagine? Right? So over the next couple of weeks, it became clear that he wanted us to go to a place called Digne Laban. Okay, I'll show you how you spell that. This is in my book, by the way. Digne is spelled Digne Lesban. Digne Laban. It's a tiny little place. There's really not much going on in Digne Laban, if you want to know the truth. So we fly all the way to Paris, and then we go from Paris on the trains down to Digne Laban, and it's like this tiny little town that has nothing to look at. There's only one thing to look at in this whole town, and that is there's a botanical garden behind a church. And he wanted us to go to this botanical garden behind the church. And so he appears to Mimi and explains to Mimi that by the time they got to France, 5 years after all that stuff happened, they survived on the fruits and the vegetables and the herbs that were native to that part of the south of France. And this is why he took us to a botanical garden, so he could show us the food that they lived on while they were there. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have ever been to the Cave of Mary Magdalene, but when we went there, it's on a very steep mountain. It took about 45 minutes to climb up the steep mountain. And I was I was about 56 or 57 at the time, and I had to stop a bunch of times to catch my breath because it was so steep. Now, one of the things that's in my book is that while I was living with Mimi that 2 years, I started to paint again because Mimi's father was an art collector and they were from Cuba. And her fondest childhood memories were having her mom and dad invite painters who were not famous yet from Cuba, and to invite painters over for the weekend, and her mom would cook and they would have food and wine, and these painters would make paintings in the house and give the paintings to Mimi's family as gifts. And so what ends up happening is Castro takes over Cuba and confiscates her family's paintings because they had to leave their house. And they started the Cuban Art Museum with her family's paintings, and they are still in the Cuban Art Museum in Havana. So because I was living in New York at the time, and when I would go down to visit Mimi, she was an acupuncture doctor and a Reiki master, and she was a healer. And so when she would be treating her clients, I would be in the bedroom and I would paint because she got me a couple of canvases. She knew I had painted a couple of years earlier, and she wanted to see what I would paint. So I had a couple of little canvases, maybe 24 inches canvases. And the very first painting I made was called The Face Around the World. Because while I was painting this, just imagine that I have, there's different ways of painting. Sometimes you use a brush. Sometimes you can use like a paper towel and use it to dab like a stamper on your computer. And so when I was finishing making that first painting, I put my paper towel onto the canvas that had paint on it, and they guided my hand to move my hand, and it looked just like a face. I had no intention of making a face, and so that became known as The Face Around the World. Let me see if I could find that in the book. And so after the painting was done, Mimi had her dad come down from his apartment, and oh, here it is. Here's the painting. And so when her dad, who didn't speak English, saw the painting, she asked her dad, well, what do you think about this painting? And her dad said, well, tell David his paintings are a gift from God. Her dad had found all these Cuban painters who became super famous and sold paintings for $100,000, $200,000, even $400,000. There was a whole era of Cuban paintings, and her father found all those paintings. So I started to paint in her bedroom. All the paintings from the book I made in her bedroom. There are paintings that are 8 feet by 3 feet, 6 feet by 6 feet, 7 feet by 5 feet. I made all of these paintings in this little bedroom. Okay. And I painted the Cave of Mary Magdalena from every angle a year before I went to the Cave of Mary Magdalena. And when we got to the cave, it was really an amazing experience because I had written a song with Mary Magdalene that Mimi had channeled about 6 months earlier when we were in Sedona. And the song is in the book. The song is called A Rose Still Grows in the Desert. And Mary Magdalene gave those words to Mimi, and I had my guitar with me when we were in Sedona, and I wrote that into a song. Now, the song is all about a rose growing in the desert by the river that flows to the trees. A rose still grows in the desert, and my spirit is carrying me. And so that was what the first 2 verses were about. But the very last verse of the song were words that had nothing to do with the first 2 verses of the song. And the words in the last verse were, come with me to the mountain where my spirit flies high on the breeze. Come with me to the mountain where my spirit is carrying me. When we got to the Cave of Mary Magdalene, one of the things that the Cave of Mary Magdalene is famous for is that there's a constant breeze that comes up from the Mediterranean, up through the south of France, up to where the Cave of Mary Magdalene, and there's always a breeze at the Cave of Mary Magdalene. Those words that she gave me were, "Come with me to the mountain where my soul flies high on the breeze. Come with me to the mountain where my spirit is carrying me." After our lives are over, we still visit in our imagination, in our soul in heaven. We still visit the places that are most meaningful to us that when we were alive. And Jesus told me through Mimi that once they found the cave of that cave that we know as the Cave of Mary Magdalene, they lived out the rest of Mary Magdalene's life there, and Mary Magdalene lived to be in her 50s. Sarah, when she was old enough, had 3 children of her own. So what the Da Vinci Code alludes to, that somehow Mary Magdalene was pregnant with Jesus's baby, is true. And what happened was about 800 years went by. Okay, one second. So after Mary Magdalene died in her 50s, Jesus went back to India, and he died in India. And if you look up on Google, is Jesus's body buried in Srinagar, India? They will show you the house where he is buried in Srinagar, India, because that's where he went to India and Tibet and all over the place because he and his brother James worked for their uncle, who was a wealthy merchant. And so they worked on their uncle's boats and they traveled all around the world. So we all know that there's a famous church in the British Isles called the Church of Joseph of Arimathea. Jesus went to that church before he met Mary Magdalene, because once he met Mary Magdalene, he never went to that part of the world again, because for the 3 years they lived in Magdala. And then when that terrible thing happened, they lived on the cart. She saves his life, and they make their way up to France. And then they lived there in France. Well, when Jesus was 30, when he met Mary Magdalene was 16 years old. James, her brother, Jesus's brother, ends up marrying Martha, and Jesus marries Mary Magdalene. So the 2 brothers marry their 2 cousins, who are now their adopted stepsisters. Does anybody have a question?
I do.
Okay, let's
Let
hear
me-
it, Gloria.
Let me put on my video so you can see me. Okay, whoops. Where am I? There
I
I
can
am.
see you.
So I'm in let me put this over here so I'm not looking. There we go. Okay, so one of the things that I've read when I've read information about Jesus's life is that Anna, his grandmother, and Mother Mary, and then Jesus, when he was born, spent a lot of time in the Essene community.
Oh yeah, that was their community.
Okay, so you align with that whole.
Oh yeah, because you know what? In every religion, you have the people who live inside the box and do everything by the word, and then you
Yep.
have people who are more open-minded. And so the Essenes were the open-minded, spiritual Jewish people who believed in herbs and healing and meditation that was a little outside of the box of the Jewish religion. So yes, they absolutely were Essenes.
Yeah. So like he learned a lot of his practices, right? Didn't he he
Yeah.
must have absorbed all of that, information that
Well,
just was part of their life.
first of all, Mother Mary was a super spiritual woman. Okay. When Jesus and Mary Magdalene had their first lifetime on earth, and they were incarnated into that soul family that you just drew on your diagram of the family tree. Mother Mary, her sister, Joseph of Arimathea, James, and Martha were all part of this ancient soul family. And believe it or not, every religion on this planet was started by that soul family. So if you, here, let me get this thing. So if you write Mother Mary, I'm going to give you a list of Mother Mary's other lifetimes in her soul lineage. In the Hindu religion, it's about Krishna, Arjuna, and Radha. Mother Mary was Radha. Then she reincarnated as Kuan Yin, Isis, one of Moses's wives. These are all, because Moses had 7 wives. These were all reincarnations of Mother Mary. So she has always, her soul has always been the divine feminine. Okay. Now, I know this is a very, very serious subject. So if I serve it up like this, there's going to be something that's going to be comical about this. So after my book came out in 2019, I was writing a screenplay. The screenplay was called A Sacred Love. A Sacred Love. I don't know if this thing will ever be made, if it will still be called A Sacred Love. But I was working with a Hollywood writer and a Hollywood producer who loved the story, and we were working on the screenplay. And we get to a certain part of the screenplay where we have to show who got Mother Mary pregnant. Now, I grew up Jewish, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know anything about anything regarding Christianity at all. Most Jewish people don't. Just like if you grew up in a Christian house, you probably don't know that much about Krishna or Muhammad or Buddha, because that wouldn't be part of your family's conversations, right? And so my screenwriter said to me, well, we got to write in here who got Mother Mary pregnant. I said, I have no idea who got Mother Mary pregnant. And so my producer said, well, just make something up. In case you don't know me, I don't make stuff up. I don't need to make stuff up, because the truth of what I've lived through is so unbelievable. I don't have to make stuff up. And I got so uncomfortable. Like, really? I'm going to rewrite a part of history that I have no clue about? I'm just going to make it. Sorry, guys. Not me. I'm not going to do it. So I said, let's change the subject. Let's talk about anything but that, because that was something I wasn't going to touch that with a 100-foot pole. Well, 3 weeks go by, and I get an email from a channeler from Connecticut who came to my event in Greenwich, Connecticut, at the Spiritualist Church that was in Greenwich, Connecticut. And 6 months earlier, when she came to my event, she channeled Mother Mary at the event. And she gave, after the event was over, Mother Mary had so much information that she wanted to give to this woman that she started sending me long emails with incredible information that was connected to me and this whole thing. But I haven't heard from that channeler in 6 months. But 3 weeks after that conversation, that channeler sends me an email. She says, hi, David. I was at your event 6 months ago, and I channeled Mother Mary for you, and I gave you some messages. And I haven't heard from Mother Mary in a while, but she gave me a message to give to you. And she says, you're going to understand what this means. And she said, he was a Roman soldier with really hot legs. This is the part where people usually crack up laughing. Okay, but I can't hear you guys laughing, so I'll just imagine you guys are laughing. Okay, so this is what really happened. Mother Mary had a boyfriend that was a Roman soldier. And in that time period, if a Jewish woman got pregnant by a Roman soldier, she was stoned to death. So what her parents did, after they realized she was pregnant, they married her to Joseph, but that's a different Joseph than Joseph of Arimathea. Mother Mary's husband, was her parents' age. Because back in that time, you know, the young men, many of them were killed in wars or from one thing or another. And so it was normal for a younger woman to marry an older man. And so Mother Mary married Joseph, that we know from the, you know, we see his picture in the nativity scenes. And that Joseph was the father of James, and then his younger brother, Josie, and the rest of their brothers and sisters. So I know that's a shock for you guys to hear, but believe me, it was a shock for me to hear when I got that information. Does anybody else have a question?
We have a couple of questions on the chat box. One, Ben asks, what was the name of the other children?
So you know where you put Jesus and James? You remember you put James's name under Jesus on the first page with the family tree? Under James, write the name Josie, Josey. Because Josie was their younger brother. And what I think happened was that after, you got to remember that their father was much older, like the age of her parents. And what I think happened is that after James and Josie were born, and a couple of their sisters were born, their dad, Joseph, died because he was elderly at that point. And then Mother Mary had a new husband after that. I don't know if all, because Jesus had 4 brothers and 3 sisters, but I don't know if all 4 brothers and 3 sisters were fathered by Joseph. Okay. Oh, Kathleen, you have a question.
Yes, I have a question and I have some comments. Thank you, David, for being here. Can you hear me?
You're welcome. Yeah, I hear you good.
Okay. Diane knows I've been attending here for over 2 decades.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, I'm a nurse and I go way, way back with the first near-death experiences that I learned about and had patients that had come back from, we were just starting to code people. So I knew Dr. Kubler-Ross from when she was doing her initial research, okay, way back. So with all due respect, I have some questions, some comments. First question is, in the Da Vinci Code, in the preface, it states that this is fiction. Are you aware of that? I mean, it's rhetorical. It's written by the author, the Da Vinci Codes. The preface says this is based on fictionalized facts. Second of all,
they had to write that, because if they didn't write that, their buildings would have been blown up.
well, okay. I'm blowing up internally right now, okay? Looking for support. You saw the last.
So hold on, before you tell me the next question, let me address this question, because this was the next thing that I was about to talk about.
About the preface of the Da Vinci Code?
Yes.
Okay.
I want you to make a rectangle. And under the rectangle, write the Last Supper. The Last Supper was painted by Leonardo da Vinci. So write Da Vinci under the Last Supper. Da Vinci, next to Da Vinci, write the word Milan. Wow, this is amazing. Because Da Vinci painted the Last Supper in Milan, Italy, northern
St.
Italy.
Ambrosio Church, yes.
Okay, so we know that Jesus is in the middle, right?
Your
Mary
marker
Magdalene-
is not showing up at all.
I know, you just, as to make this whole thing perfect, the marker is running out of ink right now. So this is what we got. Okay, so Mary Magdalene is to the left of Jesus in the middle, right? To the right of Jesus are 2 people whispering. Those 2 people whispering are James and Josie. Those are his brothers who are sitting right next to him. They were at the holiday to celebrate Passover. The family had all gone to Joseph of Arimathea's house, big house in Jerusalem. And they're there to celebrate this dinner that we now know as the Last Supper. There's somebody sitting at the end of the table, at the head of the table over here, on the other side of the table. This is Joseph of Arimathea because they're in his house. Now, all of the people in the painting of the Last Supper, all of those people have skin color like my color, like they were white. The reason why they were painted white is because any person who's doing a painting of people are called figures. When you paint a person, that's called a figure. And whenever you're painting figures, it's much easier to paint models. So Leonardo da Vinci had models to be the different people sitting at the table. All those models were from northern Italy, where people have this color skin tone. Jesus and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, the whole family, they were from the Middle East, where people have caramel colored skin, similar to what we would see from somebody from Central America, or, you know, or from somebody from Puerto Rico. But there's another reason why Leonardo da Vinci painted the Last Supper like this. That's because Leonardo da Vinci was a reincarnation of Jesus's first brother, James.
Okay, so my other comments were that in the Bible, reference to brother it was a colloquial term. Like if you have an aunt that you love, a woman, a friend of your parents, you could refer to her as your aunt. If you had, a neighbor's son, you could refer to him as brother, just like people on the south side of Chicago refer to, hey, bro, not really a brother. So let me just make a comment that I am half Assyrian. The Bible, Jesus's language was Aramaic. My grandmother was born outside of Bethlehem. And the Bible, especially the New Testament, was written at the time of Jesus, not.
No, it wasn't. It was written, the first three Gospels were written 50 years after.
That's not true. That's why I'm challenging you. And I'm inviting you to enlighten yourself. This is according to theologians, through scholars, the Peshitta, ancient scripture. Jesus spoke Aramaic. In fact, even in the movie, The Passion of Christ, Mel Gibson consulted Assyrian, Aramaic-speaking bishops to do the translations. He didn't speak in Latin. He didn't speak in Greek. It was at the time of Jesus. So Matthew was an attorney. He was documenting right there at the time of Jesus what Jesus said. Okay, I'm just saying, I invite you to look at that. I think the miracle is that we can all have different faiths, different beliefs, but we're wired to be connected to divine. So I'm just encouraging some facts to be explored, especially because you have a very enlightened audience here. That
what are you calling a fact? Are you calling a fact something that was written by 1,000 writers and changed 1,000 times? You're calling that a fact?
No, I'm inviting. I mean, I didn't know this is about near-death experiences. I didn't know you were taking this angle about Jesus being married, and this is from ancient scripture. I mean, if I turn the camera around to my reading room home here, it's full of books. I'm a scholar, I'm a scientist, and this is from the Holy Bible, ancient Eastern manuscripts, the Peshitta. This is written, and it shows the errors in translation. It shows errors. Like one good one that people might like in Aramaic, when people say turn the other cheek, they're forgetting the first part of the sentence, because that's an expression, and it really means don't start the fight. It doesn't mean turn your cheek so you can get slapped again. Don't be a doormat. It says don't be a hypocrite. Turn your cheek, don't start the fight. I'm just saying that the Bible, and this is through University of Chicago, this is through the British Museum, this is through not just theological scripture, but Jesus spoke Aramaic. That was the language. And then when the Bible was translated, go to Constantinople 300 some years later, that was then translated into Greek or translated to Hebrew, but the Jews spoke Aramaic. That was the language Jesus and his people spoke. So I just have some other fun facts, if I may. Thank you. That Jesus and our priests that study to this day, there is a Garden of Eden. They go to the Garden of Eden, and it has botanical herbs. I mean, it has healing medicine, just like it says in Genesis in the Old Testament. And the church there, Matmadium, M-A-T, is the female word for saint, female saint. Mar, M-A-R, for male. But Matmadium, named for his mother in northern Iraq, that's a place of sacred ground where people who can't have children have gone there. And I was even blessed as a little child that I had laryngeal angiodoma. I had a fatal, the doctor said there's nothing they could do for me, that I would die. And I went to my priest because I sat there and, well, this doctor doesn't know what he's doing. I knew what God could do. And there was sand, holy sacred ground, or what the shaman, I mean, I've studied in the Amazon, the shamans there, Pachamama, sacred ground. He had me come up in church with a glass of water, and then he blessed the water. First he blessed the sand, and then he blessed the glass of water, and then he sprinkled it in the glass of water, and water, the dirt has a higher density than water, it should sink to the bottom. And it floated on the surface of the water. I couldn't eat. I had fatal laryngeal angioedema. I couldn't have the little dot on your screen now, that much of a chocolate chip. I couldn't have chocolate, tomatoes, aspirin, you name it. I was getting where I couldn't eat anything. And I went to the priest because the doctor said there's nothing we can do for her, she'll die. And then I had this glass, he sprinkled the holy sacred ground on there, and it floated on the surface of the water and went I remember I had an Etch-a-Sketch. I had this for 2 years, and the suffering, and it floated in the form of a cross, and he told me to drink it. I guzzled it. I ran down the church aisle like runaway bride to the corner of Irving Park at the drugstore, Irving Park in Damon, and I bought the giant Charleston chew that I hadn't had for 2 years. Nothing, immediate healing. So,
well, maybe it's possible that Jesus gave you a healing, but if you have this great love for the Bible, then you have every right to have that great love for the Bible. Okay. What I'm telling you is that my life has been completely rerouted and uprooted to experience what they gave me with the information that they gave me. So if you want to believe in the Bible 100%, then you have every right to do that. But my mission that they gave me, that I didn't want, that I don't remember signing up for, my mission is to tell what they manifested in my life. So I appreciate,
and I respect that. And I respect
I
that.
appreciate where you're coming from, but I have to tell you,
and it's the accurate translation of the Bible. Not
well, I don't want to talk anymore about the Bible in this situation because we have completely different facts about this.
exactly. Okay. Now,
Okay, so
do you talk about
I want to give
near-death
somebody else
experience?
a chance to talk.
Well,
Please.
go ahead. I'm asking, do you have near-death experiences that you're going to share with us?
I have experiences that I'm going to share with you that completely, from my perspective and from the thousands of people who have come to my meditation events, have experienced. There was a woman who came to my event in Orlando, Florida. And when the event was over, Mimi was sitting next to me. And Mimi said, Mary Magdalene is here. And she wants to tell you, do you remember the cave? Do you remember living in the cave with me and your daddy? And do you remember how your daddy had these scars in his hands? And as you got older, those scars in his hands disappeared. She was a reincarnation of Sarah. This woman knew nothing about this. And Mimi channeled this thing, and I have heard this at least 10 times from different people. What most people don't realize is that we continue to reincarnate. I call this physical world the human recycling program, because once we're here, we keep getting incarnated again. And there are so many people who are alive now who either knew they were one of Jesus or Mary Magdalene's children earlier in their life, or they found that out at my events that they were one of their children. And all of the stories from these people are all coinciding with the same story. These people never met each other. And so if it makes you feel good to believe that every word of the Bible is true, then go for it. But let's have somebody else ask a different question, because we've been on this thing and I want to give other people a chance. So thank you. Who else has something to share or ask?
Um,
I do.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Catherine, and I met you, David, when you did a beautiful presentation at a spiritual center on Long Island back in, I think it was about 2014 or 2015.
Okay.
You took us on a beautiful meditation
Okay.
where you just said, just imagine that uh, you're standing at the edge of the ocean and there's a boat or a ship filled with spirit people, and
Yep.
just get yourself there, whether you float or swim or just,
Yep.
magically get there. So I did.
Walk on the water, whatever makes you
Yeah.
happy to
And
get to the boat.
then you played your flutes, and it
Yep.
was so beautiful. I had the most amazing experience that was just uh it was just incredible with my grandparents, and they thanked me for being here, for taking the torch, so to speak, to be the one to heal the family dysfunction. And my grandmother was taking full responsibility for some of the things that were passed down in the generations. And I had a beautiful healing with the Native American tribe that works with me. And it was absolutely profound. And so I know your work, and I know firsthand, these experiences that for me, that was so healing, because at the time I didn't know that I was, here to do that. And over time, I now understand that I am, that I am, through my life's journey, that has worked that way for me. But I want to say that David has been around a long time, and he, has dedicated his life to his spiritual work in the world. And he's here today to share profound, beautiful experiences with us, right? He's not asking for money. He's not asking for anything. He's here to share what he experienced as an experiencer, and to be challenged in a way that, where you have to defend yourself. I feel I just want to apologize to you that you were put in that position, because I appreciate I appreciate your work. I appreciate anybody that's here and that are experiencers and that are openly, publicly sharing their experiences to help others. And
Thank
I
you, Catherine.
yeah.
Thank you. I want to share a story that connects directly to that. So in 2015, I was doing an event in Springfield, Massachusetts. And when the meditation was over, this woman raised her hand and she said, because I guide everybody from a beach to this boat, and then they get to the top of the ladder at the boat, and there's somebody waiting for them. And she said, Jesus was waiting for me at the top of the ladder, but why do you think he was wearing a puffy pirate shirt, like with a string around the neck and the big sleeves? And some of the women that had come to my events before started to giggle. And so this woman is looking at the giggling ladies like, what could be so funny about this? And I said, have you read any of my books? And she said, no, I've never read any of your books. I don't know anything about you, because my friend told me about this channeling workshop. So I just came because it seemed like an interesting thing. And I said, okay, well, I'll tell you why the ladies are giggling over here to your left. In 1990, I ran out of money when I was 30 years old, and I went down to Venice Beach and started playing my recorders, my flutes, at Venice Beach with a woman who played the harp. And we made tapes and albums eventually called Celestial Winds. Celestial Winds. Okay. And we sold 10,000 copies of those tapes at the beach the first 2 years. And then we made CDs, and we sold 100,000 CDs together. But on our second weekend at Venice Beach, my partner, Lisa, who played the harp, she went to the place where all musicians in LA buy their cool clothes to wear. It's called Salvation Army. And she bought me this white puffy pirate shirt. And she said, David, do you want to wear this shirt? And I'm like, you know what? I'm wearing my sunglasses. nobody recognizes me because, I'd normally be wearing black leather pants, playing hard rock music or heavy metal in a club in LA. So nobody would recognize me. Sure, I'll wear the white puffy shirt. And the writers of Seinfeld saw me wearing that puffy shirt because they lived in Pacific Palisades, which is right next to Venice Beach. And that became the puffy shirt episode that's one of the most famous Seinfeld episodes. And I was the inspiration for that. So I said, the reason why those ladies are giggling is because they know that my trademark is 2 flutes and a puffy shirt. That's why Jesus showed up to you wearing a white puffy pirate shirt. And we all had a good laugh. And so thank you for sharing that. But I don't know, how much time do we have left? Because
We have about 45 minutes or so.
okay, great. Because I want to share something else that happened, and in the documentary that wasn't able to be played today, this is the finale of the documentary. So in the middle of 2020, during lockdown, I was finishing off the basement where I was living, and I couldn't buy any more canvases because all the stores were closed, and I ran out of canvases to paint on. So the only thing I could paint on were these pieces of sheetrock, which I guess is as close as you can get to a biblical tablet in 2020. Okay. So I made this painting, and this was the painting that I made. It was 4 feet wide by 2 feet high. Okay. Now, what the painting symbolized to me was that when we're separated from people we love, the way we can connect with them is through astral projection, where we just basically meditate on somebody who we love. So just imagine this is one person over here thinking about somebody who they love that's far away over here. And so they send their love up over the sun, which is symbolic, to somebody else far away. And this is how we stay connected to the people who we love. Okay. So after I made that painting in the middle of 2020, and a year went by, and I was guided in the middle of the night to go onto YouTube to this archaeology show. And they had found an apartment building in Jerusalem. And under the apartment building, way, way, way down, they found this tomb. And that they were able to take these tiny cameras to go down, like way down below this present day apartment building. And there was a room that had 6 ossuaries. Ossuaries were limestone miniature caskets because they didn't have wood in the desert, obviously. And so they would make caskets that were much smaller to fit the bones of the deceased. And they found 6 ossuaries. And on one of those ossuaries, carved into it, roughly carved into it, said Yeshua ben Joseph, and then James ben Joseph, and, Mary the Mother, the 6 people from that soul family, right? Above the tomb, at the entrance of the tomb, is a symbol. This is the entrance above the tomb. This is the symbol above the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. How could I have painted this? How is this even possible for me to do something like this? So at that point, I emailed my 5 closest friends with those 2 pictures, telling the story that I just shared with you guys. And an hour later, one of my friends texted me back and he said, an hour after you sent me these pictures of the symbol over the family tomb, a famous channeler from England, Amanda Ellis, was doing her podcast. And on her podcast, she usually interviews Jesus and John Lennon. And an hour after I sent this out to my friends, Jesus was being interviewed on Amanda Ellis's podcast, talking about this symbol over their tomb. When we paint, a lot of times when we don't know what to paint, we just paint stuff that comes into our minds, and we don't know why we're painting these things. You know, in my book, I made all these paintings. I found out these paintings were part of the book after I wrote the book. I didn't know these paintings were part of their story. I didn't know why I was making all these paintings of caves and a cave at the top of a mountain. I made paintings that literally talked about things that Jesus gave me the information of through Mimi. Somebody else have a question or a comment?
There's a lot of comments in the chat, but
I can't see the chat, so I don't know.
okay. You should be able to push a button on the bottom and see it, but I don't feel it's necessary to read all the comments. A number of them were people talking back and forth about the advisability about what people are saying, and truly, it doesn't matter. What I've learned over the years, you know, I have also had many experiences, not as many as you have, but many experiences that are totally off the wall crazy. And I totally know it's possible and it can be very real. And it doesn't matter. But one of the things that I've learned over these years that I've been on this journey is that there is no one way to do anything.
Yeah.
There is no one way to do anything. And one of the most important things that each individual can do is to listen and trust. And beyond that, you know, I mean, what is more important than trusting, you know? So, you know,
You know,
I,
when
I, I,
Kathleen was talking before, what I meant to say to her, before she logged off here, was what I wanted to say to her is, look, tonight when you go to sleep, put a notebook next to your bed if you don't have a notebook next to your bed, and ask Jesus to give you an insight into this story. And if he appears to you, and whatever way he's going to appear to you, just be open to whatever he's going to say to you. And that's what I want to say, because the amount of people that Jesus appears to who come into my life is staggering. Okay. I'll tell you, last week I had a meeting with a channeler here in Minneapolis. Okay. And when we were talking about Jesus, she said, you know, Jesus appeared to me recently and he told me I was supposed to tell his true story. And she says, I didn't know what that meant. So I said, well, hold on a minute. I'll be right back. And I went into my car and I said, look at the title of my book. You know what that's called? Normal.
yeah.
I did an event. I did 5 events in Minneapolis a couple of months ago. Mary Magdalene appeared to 3 people a week before my events, telling them to make sure they come to the event. And then she appeared to 3 people in Salt Lake City. Another person in Salt Lake City came to the event, and she shared that morning, it was a Sunday morning, it was at the Unity Church of Salt Lake City. And Sunday morning, earlier that day, Jesus appeared in her bedroom, and she'd been channeling Jesus for many years. And Jesus told her he wanted her to go to the Unity Church. And she said, but that's not my church. And then Jesus told her, but I want you to go to that church today. And she says, but I don't go to that church. Then the silence came. You know, that silence comes when you don't listen to your inner guidance, right? So the silence was there long enough. So she said, all right, I'll go to the church. She gets to the church and finds out I am doing an event called The Missing Years of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. You know what that's called? Normal. Honestly, you got to get used to this being normal. I had to get used to this being normal. I had to get used to being a Jewish kid, having Jesus and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary appearing to people every night at my events. 400 events in a row. So if it was only 300 events, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, right? That was a joke.
David, is there a link where people can see the documentary that we missed saying today?
You know what I think we should do? I think you should email that documentary to your whole list, and then people can watch it.
I will try to do that. If I can't, I'll have to. I have a company that I email out on,
Sure.
and I will talk to them and see if I can do it. If I can do it, I will.
You know,
Uh,
at
go
all of
ahead.
my events, there are a couple of things that I say at every event. And one of the things that I say is that, Jesus told Mimi to tell me he's the most misunderstood man in the history of the world. I did this event in Pennsylvania, in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. And at that event, I forgot to say that because, there are many other things that I talk about. And at the end of the event, this guy raises his hand. And he says, "Oh, I just want to tell you, Jesus gave me the message just now to tell you that he is the most misunderstood man in the history of the world." So I forgot to say it. He made sure somebody else said it. But, the thing is that we have had so many lifetimes in every religion. And being on this planet, because Christianity is such a popular religion now, there are things that we have experienced so many times in so many lifetimes that it's practically in our cells. 1,000 years ago, we couldn't have this conversation. And one of the analogies that he gave me through a channeler was, we're all told that Santa Claus had a white beard and a red suit and these reindeers. But they found out that Santa Claus lived in a place where they didn't have the color red. And his suit was really brown. And his beard was not white. His beard was red, and he didn't have reindeers. He had a bunch of pack dogs. So if you found out that this was what Santa Claus actually looked like, and what his clothes looked like, and what his dogs that were pulling the sled looked like, how long would it take you to get the old image that you've been given your whole life since childhood out of your head to get the true image of Santa Claus of what he really did look like? We've heard these stories in so many lifetimes. It's like people will defend these stories like to the death. You know what I mean? Because it resonates with them so deep because it's been in so many of their other lifetimes. But we've all been every religion and every color and on every continent. Somebody else want to ask a question?
David, Vicky just put on the chat the link on YouTube for the documentary.
Oh, great. Awesome.
So
Okay.
people can copy that off and
Yeah.
watch it themselves. So please do that.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
I also had somebody ask something
I don't
that
think watching that's going to be as much fun as me drawing this on this thing for you guys, but I hope you enjoy
except
it
except
anyway.
we can't see see anything over that. Um, let's see. There's so many comments here, and it keeps moving around. Um, oh goodness. Let me see if I can find the one that I was. Somebody asked about if you've got any information about with the tumultuous times that we're in now. Are you receiving any information about how to negotiate all of this? What's happening in the world today?
Oh my God, I really wish I could. I wish I did, and I wish I knew something that I could say about that. I don't know the answer to that question. You know, this world has an equal amount of day and an equal amount of night time. And when you plug something into the wall, there's the positive and there's the negative. This world has the positive and the negative in everything. And when as spiritual truths come out in this world, the negative power does everything it can to limit those spiritual truths, because the negative power is trying to convince everybody that nothing is good, and to convince people to hate each other, because that's what the negative power does. we just have to try to stay positive in this whole thing and just hope that things get better. I mean, I wish I had something more to say. I have to tell you that I was yeah, let me just go to the next question. I don't want to go there with that. Because that's such a
Someone asked,
hot button question, you know?
yeah, someone asked, was all of this presumed to be in the Bible before the Council of Nicaea?
Well, his bar mitzvah was definitely in the Bible. And a lot of this stuff must be in the Bible because this is why they made the missing years intentionally missing.
There's no question that the Bible was changed at the Council of Nicaea. I think there was another one too, another time that they did pretty massive work on the Bible, and it's not, I don't know. Uh, the important bottom line I think here is that it doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter um, how you get to God. We are all children of God, and it's the same God.
Yeah.
Different people, you grow up in different communities, and so different religions have importance of meaning for that community you're in, and so that's the way you find your path to God. But it's all the same God, and we're all
Yeah.
brothers and sisters, and we all, as you said, we all come back. I hope everybody will talk to Scott Robinson next month because his book is called There Are No Lines in Heaven. And it's
Yeah.
exactly, I don't think it's any accident he's our speaker next month
Yeah.
because he said there are no Christians
Hey, you know what?
in the center with Jews on the left and Muslims
Yeah,
on the right.
for sure.
That's not how it is, and
Yeah.
that's what this book is about.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that because I've done the music at the conferences for survivors of near-death experiences, which is IANDS. I've
Right.
done music at the conferences all over the place. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And there have been 20 million Americans who have had near-death experiences that were
I think
documented.
more than that.
Well, when I started doing music at those conventions, it was about 7 years ago, and that was the number that I heard 7 years ago. But
Right.
those people, those 20 million people, many of them, because like the most popular near-death experiences where people are flying through a tunnel, there's all this amazing energy and light in the tunnel, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And by the time they get to the end of the light, they realize they're in heaven. And people of every religion are describing that tunnel with the same words.
Right, exactly.
And that means that of those 20 million people, there's probably 1 million Jewish people who've had that experience, a couple of million Christian people, a couple of million Hindu people, a couple of million Buddhist people. So what that means is that everybody, regardless of your religion, goes to heaven. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. We all, no matter how good we are, and no matter how bad we are, we all go to heaven. But once we get to heaven, if we've done horrendous things that have hurt other people, the illusion, the physical illusion of insanity is not there with these people in heaven. And so they get to see from a higher perspective, how they hurt certain people. And so that is why certain people think they belong in hell, because they have guilt from certain things that they've done in their life that they never felt that they resolved. And people can literally create their own hell for themselves, because whatever we think when we're in the heavenly dimension, whatever we're thinking is manifesting in real time. In the physical world, in this physical world, you can have a thought of something you'd like, and that may not manifest for you for a month or a year or 10 years. But when we're in the heavenly dimension, whether that's through a near-death experience, whether it's through lucid dreaming or a deep meditation experience, whatever we're thinking manifests instantly in the heavenly dimension, because there is no time and there is no space. So in this physical world, if you want to go get a book from your spare room, every step you take takes about one step, and it could take you a minute or two to get to the room to get your book that you want to get. But in the heavenly dimension, because there's no time and no space, if we want the book that's in the next room where we're living in heaven, instantly we're in that next room and the book is on our hand, because there's no space. You don't have to go anywhere, because everything is manifesting simply by whatever you're thinking. And the people who you're thinking about, it does not matter if they are thinking about you, because whoever you think about is naturally going to manifest. In this physical world, we have cells and molecules and atoms, right? But in the heavenly dimension, everything is made of light. And that's why when our loved ones appear to us, they appear to us as light. That's the same light body we're going to eventually be whenever the time comes that we're done in this physical life, with this physical life, and we go into the next dimension. So the way I explain it is, if you have an hourglass, the bottom part of the hourglass is the physical dimension. The top part of the hourglass is the heavenly dimension. And that little area between the top and the bottom, that is the tunnel that everybody talks about. There is a reason why so many people started having near-death experiences 75 years ago. Because before 75 years ago, if you had a heart attack, you died.
That's
But
right.
75 years ago, they developed those electric shock, that long word that I never say right.
Defibrillators.
Defibrillator. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Defibrillator. 5 syllables. That's a good one, right? So what happened with the defibrillators is that they were able to bring people who would have normally died back to life. And that's why we have 20 million people who have had near-death experiences, because they were brought back to life. And those people know that there is life after this life. There's life after death. Everybody experiences this in their near-death experiences.
Mary asks if you could try playing your flute
Yeah.
again to see if it will work now, with just for
All
the heck
right.
of it.
Okay, just for the heck of it. All right. I will hook this up. We'll see if this is going to work. Yeah, you can't
Maybe if
imagine what a surprise it
back
was.
up in the room a little bit yourself, away from see if it helps.
Nope, not a thing.
Isn't that bizarre?
Well, he has an older computer, and I think that's probably what it is, because
Well, this is Jeff's computer.
it,
That's why it says Jeffa on there.
yeah. I, what
Well,
kind of
you know what? When you guys watch that video documentary called The Missing Years of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, when you watch it, my music is
is on there?
soundtrack behind me telling the story. Yeah.
It's the soundtrack of my life. It plays in my car every day when I drive, and
You
it
have one of
plays
my
in my
CDs,
kitchen
Gary?
every day when I come home.
Which album do you have, Gary?
There's 8 of them on a jump drive.
Oh, you got a jump right. Okay, so those are the 8 most popular meditation albums I have. You can see those on my website, David Young Music and Art, if you'd like to see those. But thanks for sharing that, Gary. Somebody else want to ask something or share something?
I think it's really important. I thank you, Kathleen and Catherine, and everyone who commented. I think it's really important to be open, and I think that's really the lesson of the day. Somehow or another, like I said earlier, listening and trusting that things are in divine order, and um, not being judgmental.
I want to tell you guys, I think we have like 15 minutes left. I want to tell you how the whole Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary thing entered my life. Because after I had done I have a book that came out in 2014 called Channeling Harrison, about my experiences with George Harrison from 2010 to 2013. I was not a Beatles fan. I was a Led Zeppelin fan. I didn't care about the Beatles. I didn't know any of their songs. I mean, I was too young to be a Beatles fan. And what happened was I had done my event in Doylestown, Pennsylvania 3 times over that year. And so people had heard my George Harrison stories 3 times. And so the guy who hosted this thing said, hey, how would you feel about coming to do an event, but without telling all the George Harrison stories, and just do 2 half-hour flute meditations and let people share or ask questions after each meditation? So I said, sure. Well, by that time, there were probably 1,000 people who had had experiences with their mom, their grandmother, their best friend from childhood who died young at my events. But the weird thing that happened was 3 people saw Jesus standing off to the right of me from where I was sitting. Now, that sounded like the craziest thing in the world to me. Growing up Jewish, really? Jesus is in the room with me? Like, where do you put that in your head? You know what I mean? So because I had done my George Harrison story thing so many times there, my natural impulse, because about 600 people at my events had seen George Harrison standing on my right and John Lennon standing on my left, and the psychics would ask me, you know, I understand why the event's called David Young Channeling George Harrison because of your book, Channeling Harrison, but John Lennon is standing on your left. How come his name isn't in the advertisement for the event? How do you answer a question like that, right? So I said to this guy who saw Jesus standing off to the right of from where I was sitting, how do you know it wasn't George Harrison? Because George Harrison had long dark hair and a dark beard. You know, if you didn't know, maybe you could confuse Jesus and George Harrison because they might have looked similar. And the guy said, you know, it's funny you said that because that was my first thought. Is that George Harrison? And when he had that thought, Jesus made this cross appear behind him, and then he was flying over the heads of the audience with blood flying everywhere. Can you imagine hearing that for the first time, right? So, you know, when you do meditation events, we're always taught this is what you're supposed to say when somebody shares something. Thank you very much for sharing. Does anybody else want to share? So this woman in the back raises her hand and she says, yeah, I saw Jesus standing in the same spot that the other guys described him at. Then a cross appeared behind him, and then he was flying over the audience with blood flying everywhere. And I'm thinking, man, did somebody put some mushrooms into the apple juice here today? I mean, what's going on here? I didn't know either of those 2 people, but at the end of the event, this woman came over to me who was my friend's wife. I knew this woman for 10 years. I knew she was a very logical person. And she came over to me and she whispered, I saw him standing in the same spot as the other 2, but I didn't want to say anything in front of everybody. Okay. Wow. Mind blowing. I could trust that woman. So by this time, George and John had used a famous channeler in Canada named Bob Murray to contact me. So I'd have somebody to talk to about this. And so I would be able to talk to George and John on a daily basis for an hour to an hour and a half for 2 years until Bob died. So during that time, I called up Bob and I said, hey, Bob, you know, Jesus appeared to 3 people on the phone, not on the phone, 3 people at the event last night. Can you channel Jesus the same way that you've been channeling George and John? Because I'd like to know why he came last night, you know? Now, if anybody out there is Jewish, that would be funny because, like, why was tonight different than all the other nights? That's the thing you say in Passover all the time. So, you know, if anybody's smiling on the screen, they would have gotten that if they grew up Jewish. And if not, I'm sorry. So I called Bob Murray. I said, can you connect with Jesus? Because I'd like to ask him why he came last night. And Bob said, well, I can't guarantee that I can connect with Jesus, but I can try. So I said, okay, I'll hold. I'm on the phone holding for 2 minutes. And then after 2 minutes, can you imagine, right? I'm waiting to see if Jesus is going to pick up the phone. So after 2 minutes, Bob says, okay, I've connected with Jesus. What do you want to ask him? I look at the phone, like my mind goes blank. I didn't know what to say. All I could think of to say was, man, I feel so uncomfortable having this conversation with you because I grew up in a Jewish family. And the first thing Jesus said to me through Bob Murray in his low, deep voice, where he talks very slow, the first thing he said to me was, I can understand that. I grew up in a Jewish family also, which made me laugh and made me relax. And I said, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Because I don't know what to believe about you because I grew up Jewish, but there's a lot of people out there who think you're really great. So tell me, what do you like or what don't you like? And the first thing he said was, I don't like rituals. He said, when people do rituals, they think they're getting closer to God. But because a ritual is done so many times over and over mechanically, after a while, it's not really coming from your heart. It's not really coming from love. And the only way that we really connect with God is through opening our heart and through love. Wow. Okay. What else? He said, I don't like pedestals. When people put others up on a high pedestal, the only thing they get is a stiff neck from looking up, which I also thought was funny. And then the third thing he said was an absolute mind blower. He said, I did not create Christianity. Wow. And at the end of the conversation, I said, you know, I can feel George and John's presence in this conversation. And never in a million years would I ever thought that I was going to be having a conversation with George Harrison, John Lennon, and Jesus in the same conversation. Like, so do you guys get together once in a while? Are you friends? Do you do this with other people? These would be the obvious, logical questions you would have if you were me. And he said, well, there have been times that I have sought George and John's help. Then Bob said, well, I got to go right now. I'll talk to you tomorrow, David. Click. What? Why would Jesus need George and John's help for anything? Like, what did he get a guitar for Christmas and he needs somebody to tune it or something like this? That's also a joke that usually people laugh at. But if you guys don't want to laugh at that, it's okay. So the next day, I can't get this out of my head. Why would Jesus ever need George and John's help? So I call him back and I ask him this. And Bob says, well, give me a minute to connect with Jesus. So he connects with Jesus. He starts to channel through Bob Murray. And I said, why would you ever need George and John's help for anything? And he said, there are some people who I'm supposed to be doing projects with. That's what they call it from their dimension up there when they work with us down here in the physical. We're a project. And he said, there's some people I'm supposed to be doing projects with. And for one reason or another, they're not open to me. And so, because so many people loved George and John and the Beatles, and then after the Beatles in their solo careers, because so many people loved George and John, there are some people that I need George and John's help to get through to these people because I can't get through to them because they're not open to me. And it took me 5 years to realize that he was talking about me. I wasn't open to working with him. When I was a kid, I used to have a wake up in the middle of the night and there was a man with long hair and a beard at the end of my bed. I put the covers over my head because that's what you do. You know, I didn't know I was supposed to be involved in this thing, you know, and that's how the whole thing started. And from that point forward, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and Mother Mary appeared to people every night, 400 nights in a row.
Amazing and wonderful. Pamela wrote, this has been perfect, just the way it is, and just the way it unrolled. I think it did exactly what it was supposed to do. I always believe that. I
want to say something to Catherine. First of all, Catherine, thanks for standing up for me. And one of the things that I can see is that your name is Catherine Chapey. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So the way you make a code is to take the first letter of each person's name or the first letter of each word in a certain phrase. And your first letters are CC. CC is Jesus's code letters because Christ consciousness is CC. CC in numerology is a 33, ABC, so it's a 33. He was 33 when that whole thing happened. So
Wow. I love that. And I connect very deeply with Jesus. He was part of my spiritual awakening, and he's been with me quite a few times during my lifetime. So I love him.
You know,
Yep.
the thing that makes it easy for people to separate the religions is if you went back 1,000 years, if you were born on the continent someplace in Asia, you most likely never went to Africa or America or these other places in the world. But if you could compare what people in India experienced with Krishna and what people in Asia experienced with Buddha or Lao Tzu or Confucius, or what people in Europe experienced with Jesus, or what Jewish people would have experiences with Moses. If you compared those experiences, they're all so similar. It's not one way up the highway. It's not one way up the mountain. There are different religions. Partly the reasons why there's different religions is because the reality that people spoke different languages and they didn't have a way to transfer these books from one language to another. And if you grew up in one country where your parents and your grandparents believed in one religion, you most likely were going to be that religion. So people choose their religion pretty similar to the way they choose their football teams. You grow up in a town, and if you grow up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, you are going to be a Packers fan. You grow up in a place where everybody is one religion, then you're going to grow up in that religion. But the reason why God has all these different religions is so this way people of every language have at least a clue of some way to get up a spiritual mountain with something.
Right. Some way to find God.
Yeah. And God is the short version of good. Are you a good guy or a bad guy? And that's where the word God came from. But I want to tell you guys something, that there is one easy way to talk about God to whoever you're talking about. All you have to do is call God the creator.
There you go.
Because that's not something anybody's going to argue about. People will argue about who God's son was and all these other things. But if you just call God the creator, then it unites every religion.
What about calling God love?
That's good. It's 4 letters, but it still works.
Yeah.
Still works.
What about all the imams and whatever in the world that are hijacking all the religions, and making it their own word? That just drives me crazy.
Oh man, I have to tell you that there are people who hijack their religions and become fanatics in every color on every continent.
Sure.
You know what I mean? When people are not open-minded and when people think that there's only one way,
No.
people have the choice to believe whatever they want, but at the end of the day, we're all going to end up in heaven. And this whole story that only a certain group of people gets to go to heaven,
Not true.
I
Not true.
don't believe that, and everything that has been written by people who have had near-death experiences from every religion, they're describing it in the same words. So how can you say that only one group gets to heaven when everybody's describing the same thing?
Exactly.
And the Christians used to say one way, and I say it's one way, but not just one way. It drives me crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no one way to do anything. That's universally true. There's no one way to do anything.
Yeah. Does anybody else want to ask anything? How much time do we have left? I think we're over.
I have a question.
Okay.
I wanted to, I guess I'm talking over someone.
No.
Okay. I want to know, do we get to choose whether or not reincarnate? Because I don't want to.
Well,
Okay.
could I maybe put my 2 cents in on that?
Sure.
Because I firmly believe that, first of all, we don't have enough knowledge to really make that decision here on Earth. But when you get back to home, when you go home after you leave the Earth, I believe we meet with our our guides and our and God and whoever we need, and then you make these decisions. Then when you've
I
gone
really
over,
want his opinion because somebody else already
right?
told me that. But I
Okay.
think when you're there,
All
you're in
right.
a state of
Okay.
euphoria that you might
Okay.
think
Okay.
you could
You
take
made your
on
point.
anything.
All right. All right.
You
So
made your point.
since he's had a near-death experience, I'd like to have his view on it.
Okay.
I've had
So-
two, but that's all right.
So one, you have to understand that before this whole thing started happening in 2014, where I started doing the meditation events, before that, I was involved in a spiritual path. It's not important what the name of the spiritual path was, but I was really, really living this word for word, taking it super, super seriously. And one of the reasons that I was involved in that path was that I was told that if I do certain things the way this path was teaching, that I would not have to reincarnate again. And that was a major driving force that kept me in that spiritual path, because I didn't want to reincarnate again like yourself. Okay. So once George and John start channeling to me through Bob Murray, the channeler, who they spoke to me through for 2 years, every day for an hour, one of the questions that I asked them was the same question that you just asked. Am I going to have to reincarnate again, or am I done because I've studied spirituality, I meditate, I'm a good person, I don't beat people up, you know what I mean? All the things that we would logically think, well, I shouldn't have to reincarnate again. And they told me that I still had 2 or 3 more lifetimes that I had to come back for. And honestly, it took me about 6 months to get over that, because I was so dead set on, I don't ever want to have to reincarnate again. But the thing is that right now we're in this age of ascension. There's more people meditating and having spiritual experiences now because meditation and spirituality is so popular. And the reason why is because Mother Mary is deeply involved now in the whole reincarnation process with Archangel Uriel. And so Mother Mary reincarnates different members of the family, of that heavenly family. And these are the light workers in the world now. It's amazing how many people I have met from doing 540 events. How many people know that they are a reincarnation of Sarah, or know they are a reincarnation of Mary Magdalene, or know they are a reincarnation of Jesus or Mother Mary? I'm telling you, I was such a skeptic about any of this stuff. I thought that anybody could make up anything and that there was no way to prove anything about channeling. And I have to tell you, I was wrong about that. The universe and all its angels have ways of confirming and validating things that we might ordinarily not know what to believe. But the good news is that we don't have to, it's not always like we don't reincarnate necessarily the following year or 2 years later. It could be 100 years later, it could be 200 years later. But I'm glad I could answer that question for you, because that is a real specific answer that I was given from George and John. And I'm sorry to tell you that that's the answer they gave me.
Yeah.
So let's end this on a happy note, because that's
Yes.
not a happy note for many people. How can we end this on a more positive, happy note?
Well, there's something that was really interesting. I read your book recently, that one you were talking about that you wrote, channeling George Harrison.
Yeah.
And I had just finished reading Catcher in the Rye. Remember that story by
Yeah.
Steinbeck?
Yeah.
It is written in the same 16-year-old present tense type of your life on your sleeve. It was really fun, and comparing those two.
Well, I guess something that I could say to end this on a note that's going to put a smile on everybody's face is that the reason why George was sent to wake me up is because George was a reincarnation of Jesus's second brother, Josie, Josey, that you put under Jesus and James and Josie. Somebody else want to say anything before we close this?
I think this has been a wonderful time, David. I thank you so much for sharing, not just this time, but the other time and all the times that you share. Truth has a ring to it, and whether or not you can hear that ring, it's there. And I just feel that we're very blessed to have had you, and I'm very grateful for your sharing.
Well,
And
thank you so much.
I hope you all will come back and hear what Scott has to say
Yeah.
next
Okay.
next month.